morning. Josie asked me to share my story a little bit, so I'm going to do that. I am Noelle Beck. I am mostly known for being the director of First Glance, which I absolutely love. I hang out with teenagers in Kenmore who ultimately don't know Jesus, and I try and tell them about Jesus. But along the way, we get to kind of walk with them and encourage them. We have 10 programs. We see about 1,000 teenagers in a year. And on Sunday, one just moved in with me. So I'm parenting a 16-year-old right now. Team break. So it's good. I absolutely love it. And my other claim to fame with that is I'm really good at breaking up fights. So if any ever breaks out, I'm on it. I've stopped in the street and broken up fight. It's now my natural reaction. I'm little, but I'm strong. So there's my other thing.
Mighty but mighty.
That's right. I was look, you don't know this. One time I pushed my pastor aside and ran towards this fight and broke it up. And he's like, I didn't even know that was coming. It's fine. Anyways, but I absolutely love my teenagers and get to hang out in Kenmore, which is a part of Akron. And I did that. I started doing that when I was 22. Really, I just wanted to be obedient to what God was calling me to do, is hang out with people who didn't know Jesus, and so that's what I did. And that's ultimately how Akron Women on Purpose came, because people kept saying, well, Noelle, you started a nonprofit at 22. I started in a community center with pizza and 22 teenagers, right? And over the years, it now has 2 buildings and staff and all that good stuff. But it was always just being obedient. And so I think it's absolutely astounding and amazing that God, the creator of the universe, uses us. That God, the creator of the universe, didn't just create the world and then walk away, but says, hey, I want to continue to interact in your life, right? And that's ultimately where my story starts today, is just the way that God interacts in our lives, right? And so the harder part of my story is a few years ago where I really started to struggle with depression. So lots of years ago when I was in college, I started to engage some depression and some suicidal ideation and some things like that, which is always tricky, and then you're in the ministry world and you're not supposed to struggle with those things. But I did, and so a handful of years ago, I had a bit of a bout of depression, and I was starting to come out of it, and my husband and I had started to walk through and understand officially that we were infertile. Okay, so I'd been married for 14 years at the time. I was struggling with depression, which didn't make a ton of sense. There wasn't A plus B equals C, right? Sometimes this is happening and I feel depressed and that makes sense. It was a lot of this isn't making a ton of sense. Felt some depression. My husband and I, we had walked towards adoption. We had never gotten pregnant. We had never been officially diagnosed or went to the doctors to see if we were infertile, but just kind of, we were married for 14 years. You start to say, we probably can't have kids, right? And so we moved towards adoption and fostering, and God closed those doors, which is a whole other conversation. And so I waited. I didn't want to know officially if we were infertile, because I knew that would mean the doors are closed, right, in kind of this capacity. And like I said, students have moved in with us, and that's a different form of parenting, and we'll talk about that in a second. But so I kind of knew that this is going to be the key, and so we finally say, okay, let's officially find out. Let's see what we can do. Are there some other methods or whatever? And for whatever reason, we took some time to find out, and we found out officially, you have a 3% chance of getting pregnant. Okay. And if you do certain things, it's going to increase it to 8%. So you're out, right? And this created obviously some sadness. And I mean, if you would have made a movie of our household at that point, it was classic. My husband decided, I'm going to work as hard as I can, and I'm going to ignore this. And I'm sitting on the couch crying, right? You can imagine this picture. Now, my husband is a mechanical engineer. So he's a little distant from emotion anyways. I say that with love. He's all left brain all the time. And so that's what this looked like. And so I remember 2 days after we get the official diagnosis, and I'm still kind of wrestling, what does this look like and what does this mean? And I'm sitting on the couch crying, and literally my husband walks in and is like, why are you sad? What's going on? I'm like, what is wrong with you, right? And so it's like a little funny and a little not funny, and my friends are like, holy cow, he's like not even on planet Earth. So he's distanced, and that creates like some distance with us. And so we're navigating all of this. And so that's in the summer. And in the fall, I hit a really deep depression. It wasn't necessarily tied to this. And I remember there just being these conversations with my husband, like, Tim, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, at this point, Tim and I have kind of reunified. We're moving forward. I love my job, absolutely do. I just talked about it a minute ago. I still do. Love my job, love my marriage, love my community, love my life. But if you left me alone, I literally was looking up ways to kill myself. And I could not I literally didn't trust myself to be alone. Now, Tim and I have always just known we can't have a gun in my household, and I know that, and that's still true today. And so, I've always struggled with this, and I know it, and so I've been very protective of it. But this was a hard season, and I was desperate. So this is the first time I ever go on medicine. I go on anti-anxiety medicine. I go on antidepressant medicine. I'm like, I will work out every day for my mind more than my body. I will spend time with Jesus before I get up to work out. So my husband is getting up with me because I'm dark. I am dark. I cannot be alone. I cannot. And so I am doing everything in my book. Jesus, working out, medicine. I am doing it all, and I'm trying to just sustain. And there's no logic. There is no logic. It's not, my life is terrible, and I want to get out of it. It's makes no sense. And so I get desperate. In November, I send an email to this counselor who can get me in February. It's a week-long counseling intensity, right? Literally, 8 hours a day, every day for 4 days straight. I'm the only person, me and this person, and she's making this claim, I will never need counseling again, right? And so I go to this because I'm desperate, and I spend a lot of money on it because I have to do something because I'm at the point of desperation. I'm getting up at 4 in the morning to spend time with Jesus, to then work out, to then run a ministry, and I am literally thinking about ways to kill myself almost every single night. And so I go to this, and I think, this is it. And it wasn't. And so I get done Thursday night, and I remember Friday morning having a conversation with my dearest friend. And I just think, and I'm just crying in the car. It didn't work. Now, my best friend is on, suicide duty all the time. My husband's on suicide duty all the time. And so this is wearing to them, right? It's wearing them. So at this point, I'm in, life is easier for both of you people if I'm out of here because this depression is affecting you. And so I have full intentions that afternoon to kill myself. I have a weapon in my car. I'm out. I'm done. And I knew it was scary because I didn't have a plan. For a while I had a plan and I had a letter and I had some things. And so I got rid of all those things. I was moving towards not being that way, right? But at this point on this day, I don't even care. I don't care that there's not a letter. I don't care that there's any explanation. I am there. Now, the way that God works, gratefully, I happen to interact with my best friend, Alicia. And Alicia's Alicia has a very good discerning spirit. Knew I was dark, and I had been dark for weeks and months, right? So this isn't new, but says something's wrong, something's different, what is wrong? Just beats me, with questions until I say, I have full intentions of killing myself today, right? So my husband gets called, the whole thing, it blows up. It blows up, and it has to blow up. And so the next day, Alicia says, something was really dark. Something spiritually is really dark. And so we have to get some people together and pray, right? So this is February 14th, Valentine's Day, in 2015. And these women come and pray. She's like, we got to find some spirit-filled women. You know what I'm saying? You don't get the, kind of the lame prayers when you're in the state. You're going to kill yourself. You find the most powerful prayers you know, right? Don't go these weak prayers over here. You got to find some spirit-filled women to come and pray. And so these women, they come and they pray for about a half hour. That's all it is. half hour. And about halfway through, this is literally what happens. They start praying in the name of Jesus, and something physically leaves my body. I feel it. They feel it. Now, this isn't something I necessarily thought about, engaged, whatever. I can't tell you the theology behind this, but there was some darkness, some oppression, some spirit that was physically in me the people who had their hands on me felt it, and I felt it, right? And it's one of those, like, what just happened, right? So it ends. It's snowing. I just remember it snowing so hard. My husband picked me up. I didn't have any men. I just had 5 women who prayed for me. And I go home, and in my mind, I think, like, it's broke, it's gone. But you don't want to trust it, right? It's a little scary. Like, this is, this might not be true. And so I live in a state of caution for another month. State of caution in the sense that I still didn't let myself be alone. I still was somewhat trying to figure this out. And I'm still on medicine. I'm still doing all the things, working out, spending time with Jesus, doing all the things. But it's real. It's legit. God healed my mind. And I've had some moments of thinking about suicide or depression since then, but really in the last 3 years, nothing. Nothing. Just you. God really interacts in our lives. And so about a month later, I really felt like I needed to be prayed for by this guy who goes to our church. I didn't know him very well. It's a little awkward to say, like, hey, will you pray with me? Right? Like, I don't know you. So we invite my husband in, and it's friends of some people that we know, and so we all gather and pray. And there was a really powerful moment because I didn't understand that my husband carried so much weight while I was really suicidal. I didn't understand how terrible he felt. Ultimately, we are infertile, but it comes from his side. And so he owned this, that he really felt horrible about, right? And so there's this moment where, for whatever reason, I really sense like I need this guy to pray for us. And so we had this powerful prayer time that was so healing for my marriage. And it was huge and so helpful and really cool the way that God had healed my mind and then he healed my marriage. And so 3 years ago, just this past week, actually Tuesday of this week, I find out I'm pregnant. So it's April, right? So God heals my mind. He heals my marriage. And I find out I'm pregnant. And this is cool, right? So 15 years I've been married, and we're pregnant, and I'm about to be 40, so that just, I'm late in the game. And so I want to tell this story, but I don't want to just post on Facebook or tell people like, hey, I'm pregnant, because this is a big deal, right? Because God, the creator of the universe, interacts in our lives. That's the story. That's the story. The story isn't, no, I'm pregnant, right? This isn't your average, like, posted on Facebook. And so I really sense, like, I need to write a blog. Now, it's funny because I had a blog and nobody read it. And now you somehow think, like, I need to start a second blog. And I remember sitting with my friend Hannah Nitz, who does all of our marketing stuff for Echo Women on Purpose. And I said, hey, Hannah, this is really bizarre. I feel like I'm supposed to start a blog. And I feel like I'm supposed to start a new blog to tell my story. So when I announce that I'm pregnant, people understand what God did. This isn't just, oh yeah, Noelle's pregnant. Man, God was at work. And so it was really cool. It was really exciting. But the story always was that God interacts with our lives. Not that, if you follow Jesus, it's happily ever after. So I had this opportunity to tell, I go to all my students' ministries, right? I go to Lays That Out, I go to the Teen Moms program, I go to all the programs. I'm like, this is what God does, guys. Because all my students, the majority of my students who walk through the door don't know Jesus. And so I had this opportunity to say, hey, I was depressed and I was suicidal. Because my girls, I've had 4 students attempt suicide in the last 3 months. One 11-year-old who tried to hang herself on the rope. So I interact with students who are desperate to get out of this world. So I have this opportunity to tell this story. And I tell it with a story over and over is that God interacts in our lives, not that it's happily ever after. And I knew that. Because months prior, I was having this, probably 2 years prior, God really showed me this. I was watching my best friend, Alicia, right, who knew that my spirit wasn't right. You can thank her sometimes. She was going to come with me this morning, but she had to do a training. I was watching her kids, and with her kids, I always take them to Five Below, right? Because you can say the words, I will buy you anything in the store, and you know it's only going to cost you $5. They think you're impressive, right? So I have this 5-year-old, and I always have a plan with them. Like, I always do something fun, right? So Xavier and Isaiah are these 2 little guys, and I've had the opportunity to just love and care for as my best friend's kids. And so I'm going to hang out with them, and I'm not taking them to Five Below. Well, this freaks Isaiah out, right? He's 5, and he's on that kitchen floor, and he's just freaking out and weeping. I'm like that fun aunt, right? And so I take him everywhere. And so I have this really sweet night plan, but in his mind, all he can think is he's not going to get a toy from Five Below, right? And so he's just crying on my floor, and I remember God so clearly showing me how often, like, I have this idea in my mind, and it's not always going to, like, I had something better, and I remember crouching down with Isaiah and saying, like, Isaiah, trust me, you know we're going to have a fun time. We always have a fun time. Like, you have to trust me. And of course we had a fun time. He stopped crying. We had a blast. We had a pizza party. We did it all, right? But I remember God showing me this idea that, like, he really is in control. And that everything really, ultimately, is a gift, right? And so I remember starting to talk about this, even in my pregnancy. Like, this is a gift. And so I worked really hard to not complain because I wanted to be pregnant. And I knew that if I got pregnant, then I would probably throw up. So complaining about throwing up seemed counterintuitive, right? I've been married for 15 years. I didn't get pregnant. I'm pregnant. Great. Bring on the vomiting, right? Whatever. Because it meant that I was having a baby, right? I understood that. And I had that conversation with Tim. I'm not going to complain about waking up in the middle of the night because if there's a crying baby in the middle of the night, it means there's a crying baby in the middle. Yeah. And so I understood God was taking me through this idea that everything is a gift, nothing is deserved, right? God didn't owe me to be a mom, just like he didn't owe me to get to run first glance or be married to my husband or the Jeep I have sitting outside, right? God owes me nothing. I deserve damnation. I deserve separation from him. So anything he gives me is a gift. And so I'm walking in this space, and I understand that. And I understand being pregnant is a gift. And I understand that none of it is deserved. And I keep talking about this. And I keep saying, like, guys, don't you understand? Everything is a gift. God interacts in our lives. This isn't about being happily ever after. This is about God interacting in our lives. And I say this to my roommate at the time, Julie. I say, Julie, everything really is a gift. And God interacts in our lives. And because of that, sometimes I think something's going to happen in this pregnancy. And God's going to use it for his glory. And she says, don't say those words. Yeah. And 5 days after my due date, I go to an appointment. And there is no heartbeat. And so the anticipation of this baby boy, which we didn't know was a boy at the time, all this excitement, and there's no shift in it, right? 30 people in the hospital praying for Lazarus, right? For there not to be true. And so our son was born, stillborn. And so we had, again, the opportunity as a gift to hang out with him for 11 hours in the hospital and hold him and tell him all the things that we thought was going to happen, but didn't. And so it wasn't happily ever after. And so it was such a weird space because I knew that that's what, not that I knew that it was going to happen, I felt like God prepared me to some extent because that wasn't my mentality. And so we ended up having a memorial service and we talked about this and we talked about that whole story. And women came to Christ through this story. And I prayed every single night when I would wake up in the middle of the night that my son would be used for God's glory, and God used him for his glory. And I had been in ministry in Akron for 15 years at that point, and I was like, this kid is doing more ministry in one, having never breathed a breath of life for weeks and months. And so that's what this blog ended up becoming, is my journey of grief, and it was just a way to process. I still write and process in it, and people watch this because they knew me. They knew me because of First Glance. They knew me because this was an exciting story. We had been infertile, right? But the story isn't always it's happily ever after, right? And Jesus essentially promises that in John 16:33. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. God wins. Period. And so I knew this. And so I had to work through both ends. Because I don't want to stand up here and say, like, hey, this woman was so strong and she just loved Jesus and loved that God used her kid and isn't sad. No, I really had to wrestle. Remember the kid who's sitting on my kitchen floor? God, I don't get it. I don't get it. And I don't pretend I get it, but I trust you. And for a while I had to wrestle through, if I trust God, it seems like I don't love my son. And if I miss my son, it seems like I don't trust God, right? And I had to wrestle through both of those. And I started to realize and understand that both of those could be true. I could absolutely trust God and trust His plan. It doesn't make sense to me here on this earth, and that's okay. And I could absolutely miss my son. And so it was hard, right? God creates us to be with our children, right? And so even though He never breathed any life on earth, people who've lost their children who have lived, I can't even, like my brain can't comprehend that because I understand how much grief I have still 2 years later, and He never breathed any life, right? And so for weeks and months, I literally was saying to my husband, like, Tim, just let me dig him up. Like, my physical being wanted to be near his physical being, and Tim kept saying, like, I'm afraid I'm going to show up at the grave one day, and you're going to be, like, there with the police because you're digging it up. I'm like, well, this is what I want to do, right? And so I don't want to sit here and act like that wasn't, weeks and months of just staring at a wall, right? And so I don't want to pretend, like, over here, like, oh, that wasn't hard. No, it was really hard. This past Easter, super hard. I laid in bed most of the day, and I really wanted to get drunk. I've been drinking for 1.5 years because I realized that I would probably use that as a coping mechanism and decided I didn't want to, right? And so I don't want to stand here and pretend that I don't go to my friends' kids' birthday parties because, and they all know that, right? I don't want to. I'm not going to, and I'm going to protect myself in that way. And so I don't want to stand here and pretend like grief and hardship isn't real. But there's no happily ever after. A lot of people want to say, like, but Noelle, like, you want to hear me say, but now I'm pregnant, or you want to hear me say, like, whatever, some grand new story, and people have asked me that, what's the happily ever after? There's not. And that's okay, because Jesus is enough, right? Because God, the creator of the universe, interacts in our lives. And He still does. Remember, He healed my mind, and He healed my marriage, and He allowed me to get pregnant. And so even though the end result was not what I wanted or hoped, right, and it's still not what I wanted or hoped, I got to be pregnant. Remember, that's a gift. Remember the fact that people who lose their children really early, they don't get to hold their baby until for 11 hours. And even though I held this little dead baby boy that we named Enoch because God was with him, but God wanted him, right? And just took him up from Genesis 5:24, right? I got to hold him. I got to see him. I got to put clothes on him, right? Like, that's the reality. And so I don't want to stand here and act like, oh, it's just great. really hard, right? And so for months, I never went. On the 8th, just this year in 2018, I started going to work on the 8th. I just took every 8th off. That's the date he was born, December 8th, 2015, and I just took the 8th off. I just used that as a day to grieve and mourn, right? And so when all those people put their little picture of their 11-month-old and, 6 month, and you take these pictures, every single one of those are me at the grave. The little 3-month or 6-month or whatever. And so there is this ability, my encouragement, as much as that's sad, right? It's not a happily ever after. The encouragement is we serve a God, the creator of the universe, who interacts with our lives. And I think it's astounding to me, right? I talk about this with prayer a lot, because you have God, who created the universe. He spoke things into being, and they became part, right? Like if I said, let there be a dog, and a dog appeared right now, you would be impressed by me. Right? God does this with the whole world. And not only does he do that, he doesn't go away. He says, hey, not only am I going to speak things into being and create the universe and create you, I then want a relationship with you. To the point that I will send my son, allow him to raise again from the dead, so that I can have right relationship with you, right? So then you have right relationship with him. And then, not only that, he says, if you talk to me, I'll respond, right? Like, so then when people are like, I don't really like prayer, I'm like, I literally don't know. I don't know what to do with that information, right? Because you have access to the creator of the universe. And so the way that God interacts in our lives, and so God wants relationship with us, and everything really is a gift, and that's continued to be my motto and my hashtag and whatever else, because I wasn't owed it.
Yeah.
I wasn't owed anything. And so it really is a gift that I got to meet my sons. As much as, believe me, I wish he were here, right? And so both of those can exist. We can absolutely trust God. And we can grieve the things that aren't here. But to understand that the creator of the universe loves us enough that he wants to have a relationship with us, that he loves us enough to interact with us, that he loves us enough to free my mind of whatever the darkness was in it, like that's awesome. And so that's where I could stand here and encourage you guys in that way, to understand that everything really is a gift, to understand that God interacts in our lives, and we can live kind of in the both world of grief. For me, it's grief, but it's also trust. So that's a little of my story. But that's where I've been in the last 3 years. And so this week, 3 years ago, I found out that I was pregnant. And so I had to walk through that as well, right? This is different. We're still in nursery in my home. We haven't taken down. Right? I don't know what we're doing with it. I am officially done with the story.